In this video, we're going to take a look at a turquoise ink by Akkerman, their number 24. Now, as always, down in the description are timestamps so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also, down in the description is a turquoise playlist, so if you wanted to see more of them, you could find that there. I'm an ink guy, and let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather spread, halo sheen. There is some shading showing in the medium, very little showing in the fine. Largely, they're all the same tone. The extra fine took 8 seconds to dry, while the medium took 12. The scrubby of the medium shows more color variation than the extra fine, but I guess it did have a little bit more, but neither of them have a ton. The smear test says you could likely recover if you smeared while you were writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then a Pilot Custom 823 with a broad nib was inked up, used for day, and used to take the notes for this video. The next writing sample is done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. We have no bleeding, but we do have some minor ghosting. It's very thin paper. No feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, no tone variation. The extra fine is 11 seconds to dry, while the medium's 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both give no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what's interesting is that it's a dark blue at the bottom. It does form a little bit of a line and push the rest of its way up. Then we get this neat yellow that I was not expecting, and a very, very light blue across the top of that. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I put it into water. And the only noticeable difference is the much darker blue line at the bottom, suggesting that it may be a little bit of a hang-around color. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. No bleeding, no ghosting, except at the scrubby, which we really don't worry about. We have no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shading comes through here. The extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, while the medium took 10. The scrubby for both give us no color variation. We're not getting it in the writing. And the smear test you could definitely recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, there is a little bit of spread and a little bit of feathering that occurs, but all of the information is protected. So you could feel safe using it in a note-taking situation if you really wanted to use it. Now, water's lifting most all of it, even a bunch of the blue, but it is still leaving some of that blue there on the paper. The same thing for the pen flush, although it is breaking down that blue just a little bit more. Now, it only took water to get it out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution, that's completely removing it, but it is also discoloring the paper a slight light tan color. The next writing sample is done on TWSBI notebook paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. We get no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. None. But the extra fine's quite a bit lighter than the stub, and the medium's a little bit darker than the stub. Extra fine took 7 seconds to dry, while the medium took 11 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows a tiny bit of color variation far left to far right. I really don't see it in the writing. Medium shows none where there was obviously none. And the smear test you could probably recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity is 2.5, and the realm of normal is 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman's number 24 has a viscosity of 1.41, so this is a pretty wet ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity test is done and all of that stuff, then down in the description is a link to that video. The next writing sample is done on moleskin paper. Not known, we'll say, a little bit for being fountain pen friendly. Now this is on the extra fine. I'm only circling some spots where it's spotting a little bit. deep into the paper, but not through the paper. I do think you could use the back of the page with the extra fine, not with the medium. It would completely destroy it. It did not touch the page underneath. Now we get a ridiculous amount of feathering on the medium. It's just gross to look at. There's tiny little feathering going on in the extra fine, but I think it's much more manageable. The extra fine's a lot lighter than that medium, and it only took 3 seconds to dry. The scrubby does show some color variation, but we don't get it in the writing. We really don't expect it with this paper. And the smear test, you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time is 17 seconds, and the realm of normal is 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman's number 24 has an average dry time of 11 seconds, so it is a little bit faster drying than normal. The last writing sample is done on 20-pound copy paper. We have a tremendous amount of bleed very heavy into the paper. It leads to, you can't use the back of the page at all. Oddly, none of this medium touched the page underneath, so it did very well as that's concerned. Now, both of them have a bunch of tiny feathers, really tiny, not the end of the world, but they are there. The medium spread to a little more than a broad, and that extra fine spread to about a medium. No halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine is a little bit lighter in tone than the medium. It took 1 second to dry. The scrubby shows no color variation. We didn't get any. And the smear test, you can't smear it, so you don't have to worry about it. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman's number 24, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a red ink by Papier Plume, simply named Red, because I like greens with reds. If you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those playlists. So what do I think of Akkerman's number 24? This writes much darker than the swatch. I wish it wrote as the same tone, though. It performs perfectly well and can be perfect for someone that wants a nice dark turquoise. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? It looks almost exactly the same through every pen and on almost every paper. So you're really left with a dealer's choice. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Noodler's Banker's Tan.